Hi, we're Matt and Luke, and we're pastors at Village Church Chicago, and welcome to 10 Minutes That Make a Difference, where we take 10 minutes each week to discuss topics where faith and life intersect. Last week, we talked about binge media and the impacts it's having on us as a society and a culture and individually. And we wanted to take some time this week to discuss what does it look like to engage in real rest, to find that true refreshment. And so we've talked and we've kind of come up with what we think are four tips. Was six. We nailed it down to four, just four tips.
So it's really refining and that much better.
That's exactly it. So 4 tips of finding real rest. So Matt, do you want to share with us some of those tips?
For sure, yeah. The first tip we had was planning your rest. All of us have so many things on our calendars, so many things going on that even whether you're a student or your job, like that, if we're not intentional about planning it, I know for myself that if I'm not intentionally planning it, that the rest doesn't happen. Yeah. So it's just important to put in your schedule. It's something that I try to do is put what days from my day off, and then you really have to guard that because it's so easy to let things creep into your rest time, and then before you know it, you're doing something else, or you are even thinking about other things, and then you're finding out that even though you were trying to rest, you never felt refreshed.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what that feels like.
That's our first tip. The second one is taking your environment into consideration. For me, as a pastor, I know that if I'm really going to have a longer period of rest, that I can't do it in the city. That I have already obligations here, people that I'm trying to build into here or serve or love on here. And so if I'm taking a vacation, and I'm some people do a staycation. Yeah. But if I'm doing that at home here in Chicago, I just feel like I'm never fully disconnected. And so for me, getting away is really important. And so even on a day off, then to try to have some sort of way that I'm getting away and having an experience for me, whether that's going to the pool, or that's going to the library, going to a coffee shop that I enjoy, or doing something fun with Asher, my son, just having some sort of experience where I'm intentionally getting away is really helpful for me. Yeah. What about you, Luke? What are some other tips that you've found helpful for rest?
Yeah, I think for me, I have sort of a list of people who I've kind of identified as sort of life-giving people to me. Yep. People who I'm not necessarily feeling like I have to give to them when I'm spending time with them. And so these are good friends that I try and make sure I'm spending regular time with. Every couple weeks I'm checking up with them and stay in contact with them, because they are people who not only am I invested in them, but they're mutually invested in me.
Yeah, totally.
And we have shared activities or things that we can do, and we know we enjoy doing those together. And that's just restful to be able to kind of turn off other expectations and social expectations that other people have of you or something like that, and just be with somebody.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah. And then the other one is finding activities and ways to be present. We live in such a connected culture that we just have lost this ability to be where we're at and do what we're doing.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
As simplistic and silly as that sounds, we just don't do that anymore. And when we were the reason this kind of connects to binge media and what we were talking about is binging media is this desire to disconnect. Which I don't think what we need is to disconnect. I think we need to address what's going on there. Yep. Whatever that stress is, we need to disconnect from so that we can then be present. Disconnecting just numbs us, whereas I think that the real solution is finding a way to be present despite whatever that stress is being, so that we're really truly engaging in something that's meaningful, whether that be, not doing an activity just because, not doing an activity because it has a larger goal, but because we enjoy doing the activity for itself. And I think that's important. And what you were talking about with scheduling your rest, it's so easy to let rest become work time sometimes. And I start reading a book for work instead of rest and things like that. So
all been there.
Yeah. And I think for me, that comes into my faith, right? Yep. Because we have, again, this feeling, this need where I get home from the end of the day and I'm just so stressed. And I'm I need to disconnect somehow. I need to numb myself. And what that's happening for me is I'm finding that there's like a stress or a worry or a negative emotion that I'm trying to run from. And a practice I'm beginning to practice is taking time to name that negative emotion, to name what's going on, that stress factor, and then giving it to God, spending some time in prayer and just saying, okay, God, I'm going to trust you with this. It's the end of my workday. I've done all that I can do today. The rest is up to you. And that allows me not to go to that need of feeling to disconnect, but now I'm able to be present. I'm not just numbing myself. I'm engaging in something that is truly restful. But Matt, for you, how does faith intersect with this topic of finding rest?
Well, I think going back to like a few conversations ago that we had when we were talking about the difference between hustle versus Sabbath, you know, we said that hustle is a good thing, you know, that God created us to work, and that like work is like a meaningful task. And, you know, the easiest way to see that is like someone who's been unemployed for a while, like it's really challenging, like on someone's mental health to like not be working. But at the same time, like, you know, we want to, you know, find a balance there, or a tension of our rest. And so something that I've noticed is that if I'm really concerned or really putting my identity in my work, like trying to find who I am, my value from my job, then what I start noticing is that like on my days off, I'm thinking about things I have to get done for that job, or I'm kind of concerned, you know, as a pastor, I'm concerned about like, is our church growing? Are we seeing new people come to faith? Are we seeing people grow in their faith? And I'm, you know, during my time that I'm resting, those things are just like reminiscing, recycling through the back of my mind. And I'm feeling no rest whatsoever. Like I come to that day and just feel more like stressed and exhausted. And so like where I think faith for me is so helpful there is that, you know, there's this idea in scripture that like, you know, Jesus was perfect and he did the work that we never could do, and almost so that we can rest from our works.
Yeah.
And so I found that really helpful, like on my days off, to just remember that, all right, like, you know, I'm doing this work in some sense, you know, or really, you know, pastor, I'm doing it for him, for the one who's already done this perfect work. And so like I can rest in him. And that means like on my day off, I can just know that since he's already been perfect for me, like I don't have to find my identity in my job. I can, regardless of how it's going, whether it's going bad or good, like I can just say, all right, Jesus, you've already done all this for me. And so I can just relax and just thank him for what he's already done, and just be present in that day. Because going back to like what you said about presence as well, that's what I find is like when I'm finding my identity in other things, like I can't be physically present. Yeah. And so like I'll be with Lauren, my wife, and we'll be sitting down, like hanging out with Asher, and she'll just be looking at me and like, where's your mind? She'll say, and I'm not sure if that's the ADD or if that's just like, you know, like my mind in other places, but you know, I'm just not present with her in that moment. And it's because like I'm so concerned about, you know, establishing my worth, my identity on other things. Yeah. And so I don't do this perfectly by any means, but the degree that instead I can, you know, find my identity in my faith, that like it actually helps me to rest. So Luke, I'm just curious, like, how are you putting this into practice? Because, you know, we've kind of been talking maybe a little more theoretical, some examples, but like, what does it really look like for you to find real rest? Yeah, I think for me, like I was saying like earlier, like definitely taking that space at like the end of my day, at the end of a particularly stressful day, and acknowledging that stress. I think like before I go on to my next thing, like just saying like, okay, like that was really stressful, but like there's nothing I can do about it. Like, and so I'm going to just spend some time in prayer. And for me, that's like really helpful, because like I think once we release those emotions, they begin to kind of dissipate, and they no longer have this kind of control over us. But then also in like the practical sense, like I have a playlist of music that I go to when I just want to chill, I want to relax. Like I just hit my Spotify playlist, I brew a cup of tea, and you know, I've got like a handful of like books, or I actually even have I have an adult coloring book that is a Batman comic, just all the way through, and I'm just coloring Batman and all these things. So, you know, I'm finding things that are creative for me. I'm picking back up the guitar and just doing songs for myself. Yeah. But what about you? What are some of the practices you're doing? For sure. Well, to be honest, like it's actually been challenging for me right now to like find real rest on my days off. It's something I've been working through, and as we discussed in the last episode about binge, I noticed myself that I was really going to that quick fix of binging. And because it was easy, it was something that I knew was available. And I know the things that do refresh me in general. Like I enjoy playing sports. I enjoy like racquetball or soccer. But I'm just at a place in life right now where it's kind of challenging to do those things, especially when I have that free time. Like oftentimes when I'm watching our son, on work days, even like when I'm watching him, multiple days a week, I'm resting during that hour and a half while he's napping.
Right.
And so, finding...
It's not very long.
No, it's not even so much the length. Like, it's easy then to use media or binging as like a way to do something then where it's not work.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to figure out like what are those things that I can enjoy doing while I'm just, sitting there resting at home. Because I know like the things I've tried that haven't worked, and I know things that have been restful in general, but I'm not in a phase of life where I can always just go do those things on demand.
Right? No, you're not free.
Life. Yeah. So the other day, like I read like an essay that was enjoyable, and I'm really trying to find, I guess, meaningful hobbies in that space that I can maybe do during that time. Like maybe try an instrument or something else, but an instrument or something else. But we'll see. Well, I think that's definitely something I'm going to be working on discovering.
Yeah. And let us know what things you find helpful and restful. Like we'd love to hear about that in the comments.
Please do. And for helping us as well.
Yeah.
Well, hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you're watching through Facebook, I'm glad you've been here and joining us. If you have any, again, comments, questions, love for you to interact with us on that page or by emailing us at villagechurchchicago.org. And with that, we're going to sign off. So I hope you have a great week.
Yeah. And join us next time as we talk about neighboring, about how to be a good neighbor.
Maybe on the fourth episode, I'll remember to talk about the next one. Take care.